So the Flyers put out the following statement from General Manager Danny Briere. Carter Hart has requested and been granted an indefinite leave of absence citing personal reasons. The club will have no further comment at this time. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Carter Hart is indefinitely not with the team, citing personal reasons. The club, no comment. Those are the facts.
Yeah, and that's what it is right now. You can't say anything else about it. I mean, you really can't. And I know people are going to say, "Well, come on, just speculate, just talk about it." There's this thing that's looming out there, and we've talked about it all last year.
We've spent 6 months talking about it's been longer than 6 months.
The Team Canada thing, right?
The Hockey Canada investigation,
Hockey Canada thing.
Which
right.
we have not been given an indication that this is in any way, shape, or form related to that.
Right, and so
could it be? I don't know.
And until we are given that either directly to us or it is reported that way by someone else, that you cannot speculate about that.
Yeah.
Because this is something that if Carter Hart went out for something that's very personal and a mental health thing,
which his teammate on the team there,
yeah,
the 2018 team, Dylan Dubé, he went out 2 days ago. Calgary put out a statement.
And
Calgary's statement
what the reason is,
and
right?
I'll pull that up too.
But basically what I'm saying is that no matter what people are the conversation that's swirling, no matter what it is, unless you are someone who is directly involved with conversations with Hockey Canada, directly involved with the London, Ontario Police Department, directly involved with the Crown's investigation in Canada,
yep.
Or even are privy to what is in the NHL offices, you cannot speculate on something like this. You
Yep.
cannot.
Yep.
And the reason you cannot is because it's very sensitive. It's a very tough topic.
Yes.
In so many ways, and out of respect for the people involved, out of respect for the alleged victim, out of respect for anybody who might be tied to this, you cannot put any speculative information out there because you really run a risk. You really run a risk of damaging everything.
Other people can certainly do it. The thing that I think
we cannot.
Well, the thing that we've been very resolute in, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, because the last thing I want is for there to be people out there who say, "Oh, you guys, because you're partnered with the team, now you become lapdogs." I've said the same thing, and I will reiterate it here because I've said it for about a year now. Any player who ultimately, and again, we're not saying that Carter Hart is involved in it, any player who eventually is named in an investigation and is proven guilty and all that in a court of law in Canada, whenever that happens, because God knows it's been years and years that this has been floating out there, where there's been an alleged victim looking for justice. It's just been years. Any player who ultimately is found guilty should not be allowed to play hockey and play in the NHL. They should be suspended indefinitely. They should be booted from the league. They should probably be fined. They should obviously face whatever legal ramifications stand. And if they ever want to get back into this league or make it into the league in the first place, they should have to apply for reinstatement. And that's where I'm at. And I've been there for a year. I've talked about this before. We partnered with the team, when we partnered with the team, after we partnered with the team. I don't think that that's a ridiculous stance to take. I'll point back to the Mitchell Miller thing that happened, where there was an alleged assault of a peer, and he was never allowed to play. The Bruins went and tried to acquire him, and then had to relinquish those rights because he had to apply for reinstatement, and he had never played a game in the league. All this is to say, whatever that is, we're not saying it is directly tied to whatever this statement is from the Flyers. And it's probably also worth noting that there's no direct correlation necessarily to Dylan Dubé taking leave 2 days ago. I want to read what their statement, though, was, because Calgary's sounded different than what the Flyers put out. Calgary, 2 days ago, put out this statement about Dylan Dubé. Dylan Dubé has been granted an indefinite leave of absence from the team while he attends to his mental health. Dylan is under the care of health professionals, and we request that Dylan's privacy is respected during this period. So it's a different statement. right?
The
language used, the tone, it's all a little bit different. Now,
yeah, but it's just the way their lawyers wrote it versus the way the Flyers lawyers wrote it.
They went into a little bit more where it was mental health related. The Flyers said he is citing personal reasons and has requested this time. The club has no comment. You as a person out there, you can speculate, you can think, you can put whatever. If you want to add 2 and 2 to make potato, by all means you can. But we're not going to dive any further into it than that. There are obvious ramifications, though, and we've talked about them for a while. Hart has been out a lot this season with illness, with a condition. There were questions, obviously, once people got through the Hockey Canada speculation and the replies. There were some people who said, well, maybe he's just sick. Could this just be whatever has been bothering him all season? Okay.
No, I don't think it is.
Okay, so let's get
I knew what that illness was, and I'm still not going to report it because, again, HIPAA violation, and it's not been approved by Carter, but it has been passed along. And what I can say is that while it was something that they didn't expect, it also was not something serious.
Yep.
It's something that's manageable and fixable, and it's really not an issue. So no, I do not. This has nothing to do with that.
Okay. So then the other thing that people have come up with, and Andrew has to be very careful in which comments he pulls up here, but there have been people who said, hey, I hope it's not mental health related, and if it is, we know that he's been working with a sports psychologist since he was young, which we've talked about that a bunch of times as well. I'm pretty sure that when we had Keith Primo on the show a couple years ago, we talked about the importance of potentially seeking help.
Yeah.
Because being an athlete, especially a goalie, it can be very complicated. And so there have been people who've been saying, hey, if it's a mental health thing, obviously you hope the guy gets the help he needs. That's all fair. That's all accurate. We don't know what the reason is. We're not going to speculate it on any further. We're just presenting to you, the wonderful people who tune into the Press Row Show, the #1 rated pregame, intermission, and postgame show side of the Mississippi.
And I did have.
These are some of the different things that are out there.
And one thing that look, I mean, I'm not going to lie to anybody and say that I haven't been asking around to try and get something that I could put out there, but I can't. There's nothing that I can put out there at this point. But I have been able to at least figure out that as of now. And for the time being, until anything else comes to fruition here, he remains on the active roster, and his cap hit remains with the team.
Okay.
Now, down the line, depending on how long his indefinite leave is, for whatever reasons they are, there's a chance he becomes a non-rostered player, in which case then the contract is no longer valid for the season. I mean, it's still valid, but it's not valid for the season as far as for the cap hit. So that would change things. But that's kind of like an irrelevant sidebar. It's just kind of as you're trying to piece together this Flyers season going forward, and what does it look like, and how does it work, and that has to kind of be taken into consideration, right? So it was at least worth trying to find that out and get that information. But for the immediate future, tonight and
however long. Until they get clarity.
Right, until the team gets clarity,
yes.
Really, in all honesty. Carter Hart remains an active roster participant.
Okay. Now, did you do the thing that I asked you to do?
I did.
Okay. So, there are obvious ramifications here on the hockey team, and we're gonna do the thing that we do where we split this, right? Because we talked about some of the speculation, and I always want to be careful and be respectful of the Hockey Canada thing, especially with the alleged victim. So I don't want it to be like, hey, we just had this very serious conversation. Let's talk about the implications or the ramifications on the hockey team. Because again, we're not saying these things are tied. Okay. When it pertains to the Philadelphia Flyers and their chance of doing whatever it is in the next few weeks, the next few months, without knowing for sure why he's out or how long he's going to be out, Sam Ersson now is your #1 goalie. Now, you know me, some like to call me a hot take artist. I say it's not a hot take if it's true. I've been saying that I think Sam Ersson has proven to be the #1 guy this season. I think that if everything had played out, if they had continued to play the way that they were, I think Sam Ersson was going to be the guy that John Tortorella was going to look at as the #1 goalie. You may agree, you may disagree. That's fine. We're allowed to have different opinions. This organization did a lot in the offseason to fortify the goalie position, both at home and abroad. They made that trade that brought in Cal Peterson as part of a bigger deal. They have Felix Sandstrom in the pipeline. He is available. They obviously, Ersson's going to be in net. They have Kolosov playing in the KHL, where that's a guy who there are going to be a lot of questions about. Can he come over? Like, if this were to be a thing where Hart is out an extended period of time.
He's on his ELC right now.
Kolosov is.
Kolosov is. Yeah. He is on his ELC, so there is a possibility of that at some point. They also drafted 2 goalies this year, if you remember. Carson Jarnison, who they signed to an ELC, but it's slide rule. I believe it's slide rule eligible, so that could get bumped a season. But he is already under his ELC. And then they also, in the 3rd round, have a kid on the reserve list that they also drafted right after Jarnison, because they traded up, if you remember, for the pick from Jarnison.
Which caught a lot of people by surprise that they went with multiple goalies.
And then they drafted a second goalie, drafted Zavragin, Igor Zavragin, who they own his rights indefinitely because he's a Russian player and he's over there and playing in the KHL, but he's only 18 years old. So he's not something that's part of the near future, but at the same time is somebody for down the line. So definitely the one thing the Flyers did smartly is they invested in the position. I'm not certain that every player that you have there is a great player or is going to become a star player or legitimate even NHL player for that matter, but they have enough there that they can take that chance, right? And we knew from last year that they believed Sam Ersson. This isn't the first time we've said it on this show. They believed last year that Sam Ersson had #1 goalie potential, and we've said it last year. We said it this year. That is part of it, and one of the luxuries that they had with him and Hart playing as well as they were, or are for that matter, was that they could go to a #1-esque goalie at any time. Now you take Carter Hart out of the mix for the near future, at least, if not longer, and now you have to kind of figure it out, right? And so Ersson's still going to be the guy, and it's a position whether you feel like he earned it or not to this point, he's going to get it, and that's all there is to it. I mean, they don't really have another option in that regard, and Peterson is here as a veteran. As a veteran backup goalie, and that's the role that he's going to provide. But you're going to see Cal Peterson get the brunt of games going forward, and then as they make this push, but they're going to need some help from Cal Peterson along the way to win a couple of games if they think that they're going to be a playoff team here this season.
So there are a few things, I guess, at play, right? Ivan Fedotov not coming over.
No,
we can pretty definitively say that's not going to happen. He's actually had a pretty good year in the KHL. 2.32 goals against, .911 save percentage, 4 shutouts. Kolosov, for what it's worth, to those who care, has been on loan to Dynamo Minsk, and he's had 3 shutouts this season. He's had a pretty strong season of his own. I guess that'll be a name to keep an eye on. It's just a matter of can you get him over here, I guess, once the KHL season is over. That, I think, would probably be a tough sell, especially because we've talked about how different the rinks are in the European game versus here. Could he get brought over and then sent to the Phantoms to adjust? And with a long enough runway, could you potentially see him get a few starts at the end? And if you are making a playoff run, that's a lot of ifs, a lot of buts. Ultimately, this really is a massive monkey wrench in what this team was hoping to do down the stretch. But we'll see. If nothing else, the team, in theory, has a lot of guys in the pipeline that they could try to call on. Do you expect them to roll with Peterson as the second goalie for an extended period of time, or could they look to make an addition of a different veteran backup if they get clarity on Hart and Hart is out for a while or for quite a while? Could they look to make that kind of move? I don't think that they would. I think you ride with Cal Peterson as a backup. Look, Cal Peterson in the past had a good season, right? I mean, he wasn't awful. He's not been great since. But if you're asking him to just be a backup guy, I mean, I think it's okay. Urs is gonna be your guy. And look, I wrote about this today before I knew any of this was happening. Right? I did a whole story on Crossing Broad about Ersson and Hart and where it lies and how Torts has in the past historically 12 times he's been taking a team to the playoffs. He's played coached 120 playoff games. And of those 120 playoff games, 116 were started by one goalie.
on the roster, and 4 were started by the second goalie on the roster. So he doesn't believe in doing the 2-goalie system in the postseason. Actually, one of those 4 starts was because of the COVID year in the bubble. They had all the games kind of compressed together. Couldn't start the same goalie like 3 days in a row, whatever it was. And so that's why he went to the backup. But, so not really since 2006 when Sean Burke replaced John Graham for the Tampa Bay Lightning has he gone with 2 goalies in the playoffs. So I think he was trending toward picking one of them anyway.
Yes.
Whether that
Sam Ersson.
Whether that was going to be decided in the end of January or whether that was going to be decided in March would have, we will never know now at this point. But you can say that all you want, Russ. But the reality of the situation is that they were gonna play it out. Mm-hmm. They were going to play it out as long as they were going to play it out, and whatever.
Sam Ersson was going to emerge as the number 1.
Could have.
He was going to.
Could have. I wouldn't say 100%. Could have.
We can all believe in what we want to believe.
Thankfully, that's the case. Then I know I'm a lot more comfortable believing in what I know as opposed to what you believe.
Then I saw his face.
So, but yeah, I mean, now it's a little bit more spotlight on Sam, and so it's going to be interesting because
teams are going to know to prepare for him.
Well, not only that, it's basically like it was fun to play really well when you were kind of sharing time and, not really the number 1 guy, ha-ha, even if it was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge type situation.
Pull up that Willie. That Willie comment. Yeah, there it is. Pains me to say this, but Russ is right. Sam was going to be the guy.
Well, he may have been, ultimately. But what I'm trying to say here is that it was not being determined. The plan was not to determine that in January. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And can you agree with me at least on that?
Yeah, they were going to play it out.
Right.
They were. I just think. I personally, en mi opinión, la realidad, I think that it was, I think it was going to be Sam. Now, there's another thing that we have to talk about. I know that everybody loves goalie talk. I know. I will tell you, I saw Jason Martinez, and I asked him if he had his goalie pads with him, and he said, no, they're hanging up in the garage growing moss. So if you were hoping to see emergency backup goalie Jason Martinez tonight, it will not happen. I regret to inform the public